Hello, welcome. Let me call to order this meeting of the City of Bloomington Plan Commission for October 10th, 2022. Let's call the roll, please.
Enright Randolph is not here yet, but he says he'll be here.
I see him in the hallway. He's
Yeah, you see him in the
he's
hallway?
almost here.
Okay, I'll come back to him then. Burrell?
Here.
Seaboard?
Here.
Cockrum?
Here.
Herrera?
Here.
Kinsey? Here. Smith?
Here.
St. John?
Here.
Whistler?
Here.
And Enright Randolph.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, seems that we do have a quorum, so we will proceed. Let me start by just giving a quick overview of what's in front of us tonight. We have minutes to be approved. We have reports, resolutions, and communications. There are two petitions that have been continued to our November meeting. Those are PUD DP 2421, Petitioner Robert V. Shaw, the property on North Prow Road, 3500 block of North Hackberry Street, and also Petitioner Cutters Kirkwood 123 LLC, that's SP 24-22, the property at 115 East Kirkwood Avenue. Both of those petitions have been continued to the November 14th meeting. So if you are here for those, I'm sorry, you'll have to come back next month. Tonight we will hear three petitions. First, SP 27-21. The petitioner is Michael Cordaro of the Johnson Creamery. This is the property at 335 West 8th Street. We will then have SP 06-22, Strawser Construction Company, Inc., petition on the property at 3070 South Walnut Street. And we'll hear ZO 40-22 from Monroe County Government regarding the northeast corner of I-69 and Fullerton Pike. Before we get to all those petitions, we have a little bit of internal business to do, starting with minutes to be approved. We do have minutes from the March 14th, 2022 meeting, which we need to reapprove, and then also minutes from the September 12th, 2022 meeting. So let's start with the March 14th, 2022. I think we need to take these separately. Any questions or corrections or concerns about the reapproval of the March 14th, 2022 minutes?
I'll motion to approve the March 14th, 2022 minutes.
Can I jump in real quick? Michael Rooker, City Attorney for the city, just jump in very quickly. And I just want to confirm with staff that I'm looking at the correct version. I may suggest one modification to the minutes, that the minutes would identify which members participated in person and which members participated via Zoom. That's something that minutes are supposed to reflect when there's a hybrid meeting. And I don't know if Jackie is available or another member of staff can confirm. I think I'm looking at the correct version and it doesn't identify that. But I might suggest that the motion include that suggested amendment to the minutes.
I'm happy to make that. It does not include. So
yeah, I'm guessing, yeah, that was from before. Sorry, Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. That was from before. We were be careful to track that, so I assume that is still missing. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Jackie. So I'll amend my motion to just indicate that to approve the minutes with the possibility or with the hope for addition of information about who was present and who was virtual or remote.
And
Second.
do we have that information?
It should be in the recording.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can just direct staff to make that correction based on the information they have. We know that information based on the CATS feed and other information we have. So.
Okay. This is for the March 14th, 2022 meeting. So the motion is to approve those minutes and direct staff to record those members who were in attendance in person and those that were participating remotely.
It's in the first paragraph of the minutes. It says the members present and absent.
It is reflected there?
It is reflected. It says members present, Tim Ballard, Flavia Burrell, Andrew Seabour, Chris Corcoran, Jillian Kinsey, and Karen St. John.
Just
Right,
to-
so then at some point, then we started indicating who was present via Zoom, or
Oh,
if no
I
one was
see.
present via Zoom. So
All
that's
right.
what we'll have to clarify, sorry about that.
Well, okay, well, that, I don't have that information.
Right, okay, so the motion stands then that we're directing staff to update those minutes to reflect which of those members were in person and which were in participating remotely. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
All right, any additional questions or comments? Okay, let's call the roll on the approval of the March 14th, 2022 minutes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Herrera. Herrera,
Herrera, yes.
Seabour,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes,
Cockrum,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
and St. John.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, those minutes are approved. We will now move on to the September 12th minutes, September 12th, 2022, which was our last meeting, a little bit fresher in the memory. Any questions or corrections about the September minutes?
I have one correction. I am not listed as members present, but I appear later in having speaking roles. So I think I just missed the roll call. I was present in the chamber. And that's the only correction I found, so I'm happy to motion to approve the September minutes with that correction of the inclusion of Kinsey as members present in chambers.
I'm going to jump in here again, guys. I'm sorry. Typically, we would want the minutes to reflect the moment in the meeting when a member who joined the meeting late jumped in so they would participate. Does staff have that information present right now?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I have it, Mike, sorry. It looks like Jillian arrived about 1 minute after we started.
Perfect. I just want to make sure the motion reflects that it's not just going to say you were present for the whole thing, but indicates when you arrived.
Yeah.
So that's easy enough.
Thanks, Mike, for keeping us straight. Yeah.
Okay, so then we've offered an amendment to those minutes. We'll accept that as a friendly amendment if, without objection. And then the motion would be to adopt those, to approve those minutes as amended. Correct? All right, do we have a second for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right. Any final comments or questions before we call the roll? All right, let's call the roll on the approval of the September 12th minutes as amended.
Burrell,
yes,
Seabour,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
and Whistler.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, those minutes are approved. We'll now move on to reports, resolutions, and communications. Are there any reports from staff tonight?
Yes, we have two. One, we wanted to make sure that everybody on the Plan Commission got the survey that was emailed out earlier today from Mrs. Scanlon. It was a survey by the Bloomington Economic Development Commission. Wanted to make sure that you guys had all received that. If not, please let us know if you did not get that in your email, and we can make sure you do get that. And then the second, we need to appoint a hearing officer. We've had some promotions and new hires within the department. Beth Rosenbarger was the previous hearing officer when she served as the planning services manager. She was accepted a new position as the assistant director, and so we've hired Ryan Robling as the planning services manager. So we need an official appointment to make him, to appoint him as the hearing officer.
Thank you, Eric. We will also need to, the standing alternate for the hearing officer left the city. Last week was her last week, Emily Herr. And so while you were voting for Ryan Roebling to become hearing officer, we would ask that we are also asking that Beth Rosenbarger be the alternate until such time that we find an adequate replacement, just in case we need that in the next coming months with the holidays and whatnot. So we would need a motion from someone to appoint Ryan Roebling as hearing officer and Beth Rosenbarger as alternate for the rest of 2022.
All right, thank you. Can we have a motion to that effect?
I'll move Ryan Robling as the hearing officer and Beth Rosenbarger as the alternate hearing officer until another replacement is found.
I'll second that.
And that motion is for an appointment, just to clarify, through the end of 2022?
Correct.
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Darla, would you please call the roll on the motion for these appointments?
Seaboard,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
and St. John.
Yes.
All right, that motion is approved. Anything else from staff tonight?
No, that is it from staff.
Any reports or communications from commissioners? All right. Seeing none, then we are on to our petitions for this evening. We'll begin with SP 27-21. Petitioner Michael Cordaro, Johnson Creamery. Looks like we've got Eric to present.
Thank you. This is a request from Michael Cordaro for the property at 335 West 8th Street. This is for the property just adjacent to the north side of the Johnson Creamery building. As members of the Planning Commission may recall, we heard a petition for this for a site plan approval in 2019, in 2021. The petitioners, as part of that request, one of the conditions of approval was that they seek an alley vacation for a portion of an alley that went through that property. They are working through the Common Council process right now to get that alley vacated. It's taking a little bit longer than they had anticipated. So the site plan approval is good for 1 year unless the Planning Commission grants an extension. So the Planning Commission does have that authority by the UDO to allow for an extension of a year. So the petitioners are here to request for that 1 year extension in order to give them more time to work through the Common Council process for that alley vacation. So that is the extent of their request, and so we are recommending approval of that with just the one condition that we stated in the staff report that basically another year was extended onto that site plan approval.
Great, thank you. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to make any kind of statement tonight?
Yes, Joe Patrick is here from the petitioner.
Sorry, yeah, I'm pressing to ask. There he goes.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was trying to get my video and unmute myself, but I guess it still won't allow me to start the video. So hopefully you can hear me, well, even though you probably cannot see me.
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah. I don't really have anything to add to Eric's explanation. Eric, thank you very much for the nice summary. We're simply just still working through some of the details with the City Council on this alley vacation, so we could use a little additional time. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have regarding this request, but we appreciate the committee's review of this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? Go ahead, Commissioner Kinsey.
Mostly just a procedural one for staff. If we don't approve this petition, what would happen is it would expire, and then they would have to come back and present the whole site plan again? Is that what would happen?
Correct, yes. They would have to make a new filing and then come back to the Plan Commission.
Yeah, well, I appreciate this proactive ask rather than letting it expire. So this sounds great. Thank you.
And I assume there's no changes. This is just, you're just extending exactly what we approved.
Correct,
last
yeah,
time
there
around.
are no changes with the petition. This is extending the exact site plan and elevations that were previously approved last year.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Is there any public comment on SP 27-21? If you'd like to comment here in the chambers, just make your way up to the podium. If you'd like to comment online, look for the reactions button and click on the raise hand button. And we will attempt to recognize you in the order in which you raised your hand, and you'll have 5 minutes to comment. Any
It
public
does not look like we see anybody online.
All right, last call for public comment on SP 27-21. All right, seeing none, back to the commission for any final comments or for a motion.
I move approval of SP-27-21 to approve the request for extension of the site plan approval with the condition as listed, which is that it will be effective through October 18th of 2023.
All right, the motion is to approve the request for extension of the site plan approval with one condition as listed. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments before we call the roll? All right, will you please call the roll on the motion?
Whistler,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Herrera. Yes. Cockrum,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that motion is approved. We'll now move on to SP 06-22, petition from Strawser Construction Co., Inc., and I believe we have Karina Pasos to present this one.
Thank you. Okay, so this site is for 3070 South Walnut Street. The property is currently zoned mixed-use corridor, MC. It's located on the west side of South Walnut, and it contains two parcels located at 3070 South Walnut Street. The properties to the east and south are also zoned MC. The properties to the north and west are zoned residential multifamily. Currently, the westernmost parcel located at 3070 South Walnut contains Force Fitness Center, which is a 10,000 square foot fitness center. And the other parcel contains a driveway and sidewalk that connects to the fitness center parking lot. The parcel on the west side of the property has a 75-foot riparian buffer along the southern portion of the lot and continues into part of the eastern lot. The existing driveway location was approved via variance SP-UV-40-12, which allowed for the 37-foot riparian buffer on the eastern lot and is the reason why the existing drive jogs south as it approaches the western end of the site. There is also a floodplain that runs along the southwest corner of the site, and an existing detention basin was designed east of the floodplain to accommodate stormwater drainage for the entire site. So the petitioner is requesting a major site plan approval for 3 new self-service storage buildings that will be located on both parcels in this property. All three buildings will contain storage units accessed from the interior hallways, and each building will provide a loading area for trucks to drive inside, or cars to drive inside and load or unload storage items via the garage doors, which are facing the interior of the property. I also wanted to clarify that the proposal includes narrowing the drive to meet the UDO requirement of a 24-foot maximum width, but the drive location is the same. There is an existing transportation route in front of the parcel adjacent to South Walnut Street. The UDO requires that transit facilities include benches, shelters, or other similar transit stop amenities, and that such facilities be built to meet the requirements of the Bloomington Public Transportation Corporation. The petitioner is proposing to install a bench and will work out desired details with Bloomington Transit. Additionally, the 10-foot sidewalk shown on the plans does not fully extend to the southern property line, and the plans do not state whether there will be dedicated right-of-way or an easement to the 45-foot line, which is shown on the plans. I believe the petitioner is proposing to record an easement, and will need to state that on the plans during the grading permit process. So a condition for these items was added. The three new buildings will be finished with a mix of split-face blocks, cement board siding with reveals, steel canopies, and metal awnings, and trim to match the materials of the fitness center. The siding and split-face block are permitted primary finish materials, and the design does meet the architectural standards. The UDO also requires that street address displays consist of numerals no less than 8 inches in height and shall be placed above all exterior entrances visible from a public street, private drive, or parking lot, and shall contrast with the color of the surface on which they are mounted, consisting of reflective materials to be clearly visible. The proposal meets the standard for one of the buildings, which is the one closest to South Walnut Street, but must incorporate the address display for buildings 2 and 3, as they have facades visible from a public street and/or public drive. And the mixed use and non-residential uses bordered by any R1, R2, R3, R4, or RHM zoning districts shall be allowed a total light output of not more than 40,000 lumens per acre. There are also additional outdoor lighting requirements, and the proposal does not include exterior lighting on the 3 new buildings or the parking lots. So that's something that we're asking the petitioner to clarify. And the self-service storage use allows for public access between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. The petitioner may need to incorporate adequate lighting depending on the proposed hours of business and the current lighting on the site. So the petition meets all requirements of the UDO except those mentioned in the conditions and those that have received variances. The petition will add interior self-service storage units within 3 new buildings. Although the city comprehensive plan designation of neighborhood residential does not align with this use, this development will be providing a storage facility with architectural variations to break up the monotony in design, as well as improve the pedestrian facilities along South Walnut Street. Also with an amenity near residential that is often used for residential storage. And we also found that the scale of this development is appropriate for the neighborhood. So the Planning and Transportation Department recommends that the Plan Commission adopt the proposed findings and approve SP-06-22 with the following conditions. 1, the petitioner must receive a grading permit before earth moving. 2, the petitioner must incorporate street address displays for buildings 2 and 3 before a building permit will be issued. 3, the petitioner must clarify what the hours of business will be and present lighting specs of existing and proposed lighting on the site that meets the standards before a grading permit will be issued. 4, the petitioner shall work with Bloomington Transit on BT's desired upgrades to the existing adjacent transit facility, and an agreement must be met before a recommendation for final occupancy will be issued. 5, the site plan review does not approve signage. A sign permit will need to be applied for. And the last condition, which is in italics, was recently added, which states the petitioner will need to dedicate right-of-way or record an easement to the 45-foot line shown on the plans, and will need to extend the 10-foot sidewalk up to the southern property line before a grading permit will be issued. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to make a statement?
Hi, this is Ryan Strawser with Strawser Construction. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Yep, thanks for listening to our case here tonight. And Karina pretty much sums it up. Yeah, we're working to try to integrate these 3 buildings to kind of bring more use to that site, improve the parking on there for both Force Fitness and for this use. And really, I don't have much to add. Just here to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions from commissioners, either for the staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering, 2 things I wanted to ask about. I wondered what does it mean that about the environmental 35-foot riparian buffer was designated after the variance. Can you tell me what that variance means to me?
Yeah, so that was a variance from 2012 and 2014, actually. So it was a variance request for the driveway to remain in that location, which on the eastern lot was encroaching in the 75-foot riparian buffer. So there was a variance to allow for a 35-foot riparian buffer along the eastern portion so that the driveway would be in that location, could remain in that location.
Okay, thank you. And then, if I may, there's a spot where, I'm sorry, I didn't check the exact page. It said it does not align with the neighborhood use or something like that. Will you kind of say more about that for me too, so we can understand it and I can understand it too? What does that mean?
Yes, I think so. I'll try. Maybe Jackie can help me answer this question as well. But the comprehensive plan designates this area as neighborhood residential. So this self-service storage use does not really align with that kind of designation. That's what I meant by not aligning. I'm not sure if Jackie has anything
Yeah,
to
sure.
add.
I'll try to elaborate a little, and then Mr. Smith, let us know if this answered your question.
Sure.
Basically, the description of neighborhood residential and what that should be in the comprehensive plan doesn't really foresee this type of scale of like single use commercial, I don't think. So that's why we were just kind of pointing it out. It's hard because people who use self-storage are people who live in Bloomington, so it is supportive of people in neighborhoods. But whether or not the UDO wants this type of single use, whether or not the comprehensive plan envisions this type of single use basically in or immediately adjacent to neighborhoods, I think we think it probably does not. Karina, did that kind of echo what you were saying?
Yes.
Did that help, Mr. Smith?
It did. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if I could just maybe follow up on that for a second, though, just to clarify, the current zoning, though, is mixed-use corridor, and self-storage is a permitted use in that current zoning designation, right?
That's correct.
There's no conflict with zoning, you're just pointing out maybe there's a inconsistency with what the comprehensive plan calls for and what's allowed under the UDO in that particular zone.
Right, so in the findings, we have to particularly look at the comp plan, and so when we do that, when we narrow down to that, then that kind of broad brush descriptions in the comp plan maybe isn't envisioning this, but yes, it's definitely allowed by the more particular zoning code.
Thanks. Any other questions? Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm interested in the improvements that you mentioned to the pedestrian sidewalks. If you could be more specific about what those are, that would be great.
Yeah, so, sorry, let me go to that section real quick. So the transportation plan requires at least a 10-foot wide sidewalk along this typology, as well as an 8-foot wide tree plot. And currently, I think they didn't quite meet, so that's what the improvements were focused on, is that they are wide. They're making the sidewalk wider to be 10 feet wide. And then the tree plot, they are removing some of the asphalt from the street to widen the tree plot to 9 feet all along the front of their parcel.
And I noticed in the packet, it indicates that the sidewalk is fragmented, but I don't know if that indicates it's just not complete around there. And will this complete it, or is that something different?
Oh, along South Walnut Street. Sorry, I don't remember.
I'm guessing that's where it is. It isn't really specified in the packet.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think that was referring to the sidewalk currently not extending all the way to the northern property line. And so this would complete that. It would have to be all along the front of their parcel.
Okay, thank you. And I had one other question about parking. I noticed there was elaboration of the exploration of shared parking options with Force Fitness, and I wonder if you could describe a little bit about that. I'm always happy to see when there's some consideration given to existing nearby parking in plans like this, but it sounds like ultimately that was not viable for this project. And
Well,
maybe the petitioner has a comment too.
Sure. So actually, the petitioner did receive a variance to add 15 more parking spaces to the existing parking lot that is for the Force Fitness Center. So they are sharing the parking, both parcels are owned by the same owner. So I think that's what is meant by sharing in this case. The parking for the fitness center is not intended to be used for the self-service storage. And so that's why the petitioner is proposing to add 15 more parking spaces. And those are added to the southern end of the existing parking lot, which is adjacent to their third storage building, as well as another parking lot that is in between the first and second storage buildings. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I wonder if the petitioner would comment on that. The study that was done about the overlap in times, and it's the first time I've really seen that kind of shared parking. I mean, it's unusual in this case because, or it is an option because the same person owns both properties. But I wonder if the petitioner can comment.
Yeah, this is Ryan. Pretty much, this is an interesting kind of case because we're doing self-storage, but the self-storage isn't really in the typical model that would see all the garage doors and everything for a pull-up on the outside. So in this case, you have more customers that'll need to pull up and park, unload, and go in the building. The current UDO was only allowing for parking spots based on like the self-serve kiosk square footage in the building, which only was going to allow a couple of parking spots for all 30,000 square feet of development. In addition, there were some things with the UDO that was going to cause us to need to update the Force Fitness parking. So what we did was we went and had Desmond Parking Consultants analyze the peak use demand for Force Fitness, as well as kind of peak use demand for this type of facility more regionally for the self-storage. And we aligned like what the peak usage was at certain times of day and how that would overlap between the fitness center and the self-storage use, and basically then tried to land on a number of parking spots that would allow the fitness center not to become overwhelmed where the parking lot's just so full with people from the other use that it could hamper their business, while at the same time allowing enough parking for 2 or 3 people to come and park and go in and use each storage building at the same time as well. So there was a lot of analysis and look into what the optimal amount of parking to allow both businesses to function properly would be.
Thank you.
Commissioner Enright Randolph.
I just have some general comments, and again, this is kind of connecting to some trails that have been envisioned by the city. Right across the street, there is the South Walnut Street, Winslow Road to Warrow Road Trail project that has been called out in the transportation plan. I don't think we're going to really get those 2 intersections to align, but just for the petitioner to note that, you know, if you're doing an exercise facility and the county comes and builds a trail, it'd be great to have like a safe passage across the street. I could see a lot of people there, you know, using that to run. I would assume maybe that trail might be built before there's sidewalk connectivity through that area. Also, I want to say how much I think the stormwater initiative and compliance was addressed in this petition. It is in one of our critical drainage ways, the West Fork Clear Creek/Clear Creek drainage basin. So that riparian buffer is going to do a great job of helping to protect that and protect our environmental resources.
Thank you. Any other questions at this point? No? Okay. We will then go to public comment on SP 06-22. If you are here to make comment, please step up to the podium, state your name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes to make your comments. If you're online and would like to comment, just look for that reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Click on the raise hand button and we'll recognize you if you have your hands raised.
I don't see anyone online.
No one in the chambers is indicating that they'd like to make comments, so we'll make last call for public comment on SP 06-22. All right. We'll come back to the commission then for any final comments or a motion. As a reminder, the staff recommendation was that the Plan Commission adopt the proposed findings and approve SP 06-22 with 5 conditions.
5 or 6
I think
now.
there's
Plus the 6 conditions.
Yes, sorry. There are now 6. There were 5 in the packet. There are now 6, 3 of which are on the screen now. And
There they are.
Just as another reminder, since number 6 is new, that is that the petitioner would need to dedicate right-of-way or record an easement to the 45-foot line shown on the plans and need to extend the 10-foot sidewalk up to the southern property line before a grading permit will be issued.
I'll motion to adopt the proposed findings and approve SP 0622 with the following 6 conditions as indicated on the slide. And
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments before we call the roll? All right, let's call the roll.
Burrell?
Yes.
Seaboard?
Yes.
Cockrum?
Yes.
Pereira?
Yes.
Kinsey?
yes.
Smith?
Yes.
St. John?
Yes.
And Whistler?
Yes. All right, that motion is approved. We are now on to our final petition of the evening, ZO40-22. Monroe County Government is the petitioner, and I believe Jackie Scanlon is going to present.
Yeah, that'll be me. Okay, can you see my screen and hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, great. So as Mr. Whistler said, we are looking at ZO4022, petition of the Monroe County Government to rezone a parcel at the southwest corner of the city. The parcel is located at the northeast corner of West Fullerton Pike and State Road 37 / Interstate 69. The parcel you can see here in red is 87.12 acres. It's currently zoned mixed-use employment, and the comprehensive plan designation is employment center and also a focus area for I-69 interchange. Surrounding uses include an active quarry to the east. To the north is vacant land, and then to the northeast is an old abandoned quarry. And then medical and office north of that. Then you have obviously the highway and interchange immediately to the west and south, with some single family both to the west and south. So again, the request tonight is for map amendment. That's the UDO term for a rezone from mixed use employment, the ME zoning district, to mixed use institutional, MI. Map amendments require 2 hearings. Sometimes we see amendments, requests like this, and they request waiver of the second hearing. That did not happen in this case, so we will be hearing it tonight and in November. The site, if you're familiar, is owned by Bill C. Brown, and it has not been developed. It had a previous PUD at the location. There have been a number of things discussed with the site over the years. It was used most recently as a borrow site for I-69 construction, so it went to Plan Commission, and they were able to sell the topsoil of the non-environmentally sensitive areas of the site, and then reseeded and regrowth those areas that they sold the dirt off of. So as I said before, the comprehensive plan designation is employment center, and then you can see that number 2 there as well, highlighting the interchange that at the time was being completed here. So you can see employment to the north, and then otherwise surrounded by county, by non-city of Bloomington property. So some concerns that were identified and discussed in your packet are related to 4 basic topics of environmental considerations, access, site design, and comprehensive plan. The request before you tonight is a rezone. The rezone is for a particular use. So the county would like to rezone the property so that they can build a new jail or detention facility, is what it is defined as in the UDO. So they would like to build a new jail location. In their petitioner statement, they indicated that they will need at least 25 acres for that new facility, and that through our conversations with them, they have indicated that they will possibly need additional acreage in the future for supportive services. At this time, the plan would be for the jail to be there, but in the future, they may need to move other services such as the courts or other officers of the court out to this location. So that use, jail or detention facility, is not allowed in their current zoning, ME. It is listed in only 2 districts in the code as conditional. So that is in mixed use institutional, which the request is for tonight, and the employment zoning district, which they have opted again to go for mixed use institutional. So I'll briefly cover these 4 topics. Environmental considerations on the site. This is an image that was put together by the petitioner based on some documents that were created with the last petition to remove the topsoil from the site. So this indicates some of the environmentally constrained areas. The KCEs, those listed as KCEs, that stands for Karst Conservancy Easement, and then also you can see in the yellow those areas that are slope restricted. Now, they are in some ways developable, the slope restricted areas, but they have completely taken them out of the discussion of those parts of the site that are developable, which are those that are not slope restricted, so less than 12%. So you can see they're showing that they think they have roughly 30 acres, I believe it says 36 over on the right, of land that could be developed. And again, as they said at the beginning, they might need about 25 acres to start, and then some more acreage in the future. So this area does have some karst. It also has quite a bit of closed canopy, tree development in those same areas, which we also only allow limited disturbance in. The petitioner has indicated that they do not plan to have any disturbance at this time in any of the environmentally constrained areas. And though we know obviously they don't have a specific plan for the future, but that at this time they would not be planning to disturb those areas. We have also, the department has received some concern from neighbors related to potential impacts for stormwater runoff if and when this site is developed. Much of this site drains into some of the old quarries in the area that are now privately held. So the department got those neighbors in touch with the petitioner because they had some questions about that. Related to access, I think the main concern is that a facility such as a jail or any large facility, it would probably be best situated on some sort of transit line. This is a snip from the current Bloomington transit line map, and you can see the petition site here at Fullerton and the highway, and there are obviously no buses out here currently. When we had Bloomington Transit at the Development Review Committee, they indicated that they don't have plans to add service out here, and the petitioners did say at before filing they were going to reach out to Bloomington Transit to talk about future potential connection, but we haven't heard an update on that. So that's something that we're interested in, especially in a facility type, facility such as a jail that serves all aspects of residents across the gamut of people being able to afford to have vehicles, for example. Having a jail this far out of the city with no transit does raise some concerns for the department. Obviously, vehicular access would be fine with direct access from Fullerton Pike. These are 2 snips from the transportation plan. There is a planned roadway along the western side of this parcel. When we do a map amendment, that is not automatic that the petitioner has to dedicate right-of-way for roadways that are in the transportation plan. However, if they were to go to subdivide in the future, they would have to do that. So we want to bring that, we brought that to their attention and they understand that, so that when they're doing planned development that they should keep in mind that there is a neighborhood connector planned to run through this parcel all the way to TAP, Obviously, this parcel only goes so far north, but that's the final plan, and that road is supposed to contain a bike lane and a multi-use path as well. So the comprehensive plan, I think, is the largest concern to the department thus far, and something we wanted to raise in your discussion about with the plan commissioners. As I said, the designation is employment center, as well as being highlighted in the I-69 interchanges. So again, you can see here the parcel located at the very southwest corner of the city. And just concerns about whether or not this rezone supports the basic goals of the employment center, as the current zoning, which is employment, does seem to do that. So the employment center background and intent, I'm just going to read into the record here. The employment center district includes professional and business offices, light assembly plants, flex tenant facilities, and research and development centers. Well-planned employment centers will allow Bloomington to keep pace with the changing economy, the main purpose of the district. Employment centers should have good access and connectivity to main thoroughfares, as well as good access to transit service. The employment center district should contain a mix of office and light, high-tech manufacturing uses that provide quality employment opportunities for the Bloomington community. Quality job creation is essential as the community continues to grow. So again, just concern, that the main purpose of the district is called out as creating centers that allow Bloomington to keep pace with the changing economy, and not sure that this very purpose-driven rezone does that. And then for the I-69 and interchanges, background and intent from the comprehensive plan, I-69 may reduce east-west mobility across the corridor, but it will significantly increase vehicular mobility to and from other regional centers. These changes in mobility will impact the existing land uses in the vicinity of the I-69 corridor, and especially around interchanges. These locations have significant employment and commercial interests, and the completion of I-69 is expected to increase those interests. Interchanges offer key opportunities as premier entry points into Bloomington. More importantly, while serving regional employment and commercial interests, the overarching context along the corridor should convey a sense of arrival to Bloomington. The interchanges must welcome and invite everyone to access the whole community, and not simply provide a generic respite along an interstate highway. Commercial, employment, and multifamily residential uses along the corridor offer opportunities to reimagine and redevelop in order to attract and retain employers, employees, and residents. So again, how does the specific purpose-driven rezone help support creating a premier entry point into Bloomington? How does it serve regional employment and commercial interests? More specifically, the MI zoning district that is being requested limits the number and types of uses, and this particular use, again, this purpose-driven rezone use, kind of further limits the ability of the zoning district to meet the purposes of the employment center. For example, commercial is discussed a number of times along the highway, regional commercial in the comprehensive plan, and changing the zoning from ME to MI actually removes retail sales uses as an option in the table 3-1 of the zoning code. So again, this is the first of 2 hearings, so there will be, I assume, a lot of discussion and questions tonight to help you formulate a recommendation for Common Council and further discussion next month. The criteria that the Plan Commission will be looking at are our general compliance criteria, and also we have additional criteria for zoning map amendments, so you can see those both here, highlighting the UDO, compliance with utility and service standards, as well as the comprehensive plan, any agreements, intergovernmental agreements, and minimization or mitigation of adverse impacts. And then also specific approval criteria, again, related to the comprehensive plan, and making sure that the property is being used for its most desirable use while protecting environmental features. So these are the findings that staff will be offering proposed findings next month, and you'll be considering. So while the department understands the need for a new facility, and I think the petitioner will speak about that probably in some detail tonight, we do have some concerns about this particular map amendment request and how it does or does not align with the comprehensive plan, as well as the lack of transit access at this location and how that works with the intended use. As I said before, the department is recommending that the Plan Commission continue the case to the required second hearing at its November 2022 hearing. And I can answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Jackie. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to make comment tonight? Please step up to the podium and state your name for the record and make your comment.
I won't fill in my email because I think they already have it. My name is Jeff Cockrell. I'm with Monroe County. I'm one of the Monroe County attorneys. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but I thought I'd want to react to some of the comments that were said earlier, just so I can clarify. I think they said some things that I think, while accurate, may not paint the whole picture, and that's probably more my fault than theirs. The first thing I wanted to start with was we don't want this vote to happen tonight. We never wanted the vote to happen tonight. This is kind of I don't think it's necessarily a complex question, but it is a big question, and it's something that I think an additional month of your thought and thinking about is wholly appropriate and should happen. I'd also want to say that, when we've done a Phase 1 and a Phase 2 environmental study. We've done a jurisdictional and wetlands report. We have those, but we're also in the process of getting a geotechnical report done, and as well as, prior to the next Plan Commission, a geologist is going out to look at this site and give us a report on that as well. So we think those are all kind of really important ideas and pieces of information that we want to have, and we want to make sure you have as we go through this process. One thing that was stated is that 25 acres was what we've been told is the minimum, and we're working with a site assessment on that. That's not necessarily 25 buildable acres. So when you look at that map and you see 30 buildable acres, we're not talking 25 buildable acres for this. A lot of that has to do with drainage, which we understand that there are some neighbor concerns, and as well as some parking. When we tour other jails, we see, a 2 to 3 acre footprint of a building as comprising a jail that is probably going to be as large, if not larger, than what we would intend on building at that area. And then the two other things I wanted is that we have talked with Bloomington Transit, and I actually think this is part of my PowerPoint, but I wanted to make sure I hit it. We talked with Bloomington Transit as an initial conversation. We're not setting anything in stone, but they indicated that, if this were to be approved for the purpose we want to use it for, then they would work with us to provide access. They actually had some really interesting ideas on things that we could maybe work together, and they would want to be part of our planning process as we do a site design and things like that, to make sure we cover some of their needs because of our facility, and also needs because of where this is located. Particularly, they mentioned they wanted to explore a park and ride kind of idea out at this site. And we're interested in working with them and seeing if that makes sense and moving forward. And I guess finally, I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that, while we're here because we have to have a jail, and this is a site that we've determined it best meets the needs, we're not buying this 80-acre site solely for jail purposes. I think what we've looked at, and hopefully with the materials, you've looked through our criminal justice studies and things like that, but there are a lot of different needs that we need to fill as gaps in our community. Just off the top of my head, transitional housing, a detox center, and work release, those kind of ideas are all within that report. Now, we have our community justice response committee working on a lot of these issues as well, to kind of best determine how it best fits in with our criminal justice system. Essentially, I think what we want to look at is, with the jail facility, they're going to house people who have come into contact with law enforcement, and they're going to go through, and they'll be in the system part of the process. I think where we see a lot of gaps are, how do we get people from entering the system to begin with, which is ideal, And how do we, once they get through with the system, how can we support them so they don't reenter? I think those are kind of two of our major goals, and those are things we would want to look at using this site for, as well as the jail facility. And so I know I've gone a time crunch, and I like to talk, so we better get to the PowerPoint. So this is a map amendment request. I apologize for the mistake. Can we go to the next slide? So I just kind of want to give you guys a brief history. And it starts with the state code. The state code requires the county commissioners to have a jail, and it requires the sheriff to operate the jail and make sure it operates in a well-run manner that keeps all the constitutional requirements in place. Our current facility was built in 1984 for 128 inmates. We've made some changes in that facility, and so it currently has 294 total beds with 262 secure beds. However, because of overcrowding, we have been under an agreed federal order for that facility since 2008. And that was with a lawsuit where the Indiana Civil Liberties Union represented the plaintiff. In 2018, 2019, we were going to extend that order, and the ICLU says, we think you're using this order as a crutch not to make changes to your facility. In order for us to agree to that, we need you to do a comprehensive study of your criminal justice system, which we immediately agreed to because we thought it was a great idea as well. It's something we need to get a handle on. So in 2019, we commissioned the study of our criminal justice system. You could go to the next slide. These are two quotes from that about the jail assessment. I will read the line that I think caused me the most alarm when I first read this report, and that is, the jail facility is incapable of consistently ensuring and sustaining constitutional levels of inmate care and custody. That is nothing a government attorney ever wants to read about his client's facility. So if you guys have any questions about the need for a facility or anything like that, I'm more than happy to answer it, but I think that statement probably speaks louder than any example I can give. And so, can we go to the next slide? So once we got that report, and that report, although we started the process in 19, we all know what happened in 2020, we did not get that report until 2021. It was summer of 2021. Once we received that report, we wanted to start looking for sites. Now, I can tell you as the county attorney and dealing with the jail issues, we have a design problem with our jail. When it was designed under one set of circumstances. The industry, for lack of a better word, but the jails are designed much differently now, which is a lot more supervision of staff without requiring the wear and tear on the staff. Our facility is terrible on our staff. And it also does not allow as much freedom of movement as some of these other designed facilities, which is something we want to work on. But when we started looking, and I started looking at this 10 years ago for land around Bloomington, and I was under the assumption that we needed 6 acres at that point in time. And I could tell you when I looked then, the only spot that I found that had adequate sizing was potentially the scrapyard by the Beeline Trail that would be in the downtown area. And it's such an odd shape, I wasn't even sure whether that would accommodate what we were looking at. You know, we talked to professionals who designed this. They clearly say we need a much bigger site. And a lot of that has to do with drainage. A lot of that has to do with parking. But one of the things we wanted to look for was something larger. So, one, we could implement other areas of our study and the needs that they found, and working with our elected officials at the county level to kind of review what's most important, what fits best next to this kind of facility. You know, because there's some programs you don't want to put by the jail, there's some that you do. And we also I don't want the next person who has to decide, hey, where are we going to put the next jail, because jails are like dogs in that for every year they're in use, it really ages them 7 years, because the people who use that facility are hardened the facility. They're in there, they're frustrated, and you know, they've all experienced things in their lives that are terrible. So we wanted to make sure we had enough room that we could plan for the future, because if we're having trouble finding this kind of ground in the city limits now, in 30 years, when we probably have to start looking at it again, that problem's not going to be any easier. We wanted an area with utility access, and we also wanted transportation connectivity. And when we looked at it, we found 3-4 sites. This was the site that was within the city of Bloomington corporate limits. The other ones were not. We had, and maybe this is a good time to touch on it, back in 2001, I think, the county purchased what we call the Thompson Site, which is just off South Rogers. At that point in time, it was purchased for the purpose of, this is where we're going to put the jail the next time we build it. That area of town's changed. That area of town's changed. When Catalent went to do their expansion, they requested that they have the ability to look at the property. We've given them a little time to look at that, but even before that happened, the county had already transitioned from looking at that as a jail site to something that we'd like to see more of a housing or commercial use for. And I think that goes in line with the city's investments at the Switchyard Park. So that was the only other site in the city of Bloomington, I think, that met the size requirements. Go to the next slide. We were out there on Friday, and so we had a drone and we took some pictures, and this is one of them. One of the things that really attracted the search committee and then ultimately the decision makers of the county to the site was the buffering. We did not want this next to housing. We wanted this to be somewhere that we could buffer it from other uses. 3/4 or at least half to 3/4 of this site have a nice tree buffer. The other side is I-69, and I think it's important to note that Fulton Pike on the map she showed was not a thoroughfare that went from this site all the way to the Kroger South. The county is doing its Fulton Pike project. Fulton Pike Phase 3 is scheduled to be done. I think it's scheduled to go out to bid letting next summer, to be done in probably 2 years from then. So if we got started and we had a construction going, we would be done probably a little bit after that roadway connection is taken care of. And like I said, we have talked with the Bloomington Transit already. But I think I think it's important to point out that the buffers and the conservancy easements really haven't in any way changed our affection for this property. In any ways, it just kind of coincides with why we liked it to begin with. We love that buffer. We love the fact that it can provide a nature surrounding to a use that typically you don't see that. Okay. The reason we want MI requests, well, the biggest one is there are really only 2 designations for a jail use. One is MI and one is EM. And while the jail is an immediate need, we are looking at those other opportunities. We think MI allows for more opportunities to do some of those other functions we are looking for, such as it allows medical clinics, it allows opioid rehabilitation homes, and as a conditional use, it allows supportive housing, where none of that is available with the EM zoning. And when we looked at the comprehensive plan, I sometimes get comprehensive plan, UDO, those sometimes get mixed up in my mind, but the comprehensive plan, we think this hits directly 5 of the items in the vision statement. One is fortified our strong commitment to equality, exception, openness, and public engagement. I think that in my mind, that includes treating our people who are in jail constitutionally is part of that statement. Deliver efficient, responsive, and forward-thinking local government services. Again, that we're talking about doing things within our justice system to help prevent people from entering the system to begin with. We think that that's important, and we think that we're somewhat unique in that, although I think the rest of the world's coming to that conclusion as well. Meet basic needs and ensure self-sufficiency for all residents. Again, I think we're going to be dealing with the people who need the most help to become self-sufficient. Fortify our progress towards improving public safety and civility. I think that goes without saying. The last one takes a little bit more thanking. Offer a wide variety of excellent educational opportunities for our residents at every stage of life. I think the type of education that we are hoping to do with our jail includes programming space. It includes other types of education as far as probably mental health, substance abuse, how to help with those kind of things. And they're at a stage of life that we really don't think about, or at least I don't think about when I think about stages of life as an age. It's in terms of what they're able to do and how to get them to the point where they can become more self-sufficient. I think that's all I have. I know that there are some county officials here, and I think there's some county officials on the Zoom, so if you guys have questions, more than happy to answer them. I'd really like to hear what kind of information you think is lacking and what you'd like to know more about.
Thank you. Are there questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner Kinsey.
Thanks for the presentation. I have several questions. First, can you talk a little bit about the stormwater concerns that were raised? I don't know if this is something both for staff and for the petitioner. And what drainage mitigation? I know you said a geologist is coming, so perhaps this is not a question you can fully answer now, but I think that's a concern given the fact that it came from neighborhood area, and we certainly don't want a flooded jail either.
No, we don't want a flooded jail, and we're aware, although I don't think we've heard from anybody who has called the city about that, but we're aware of that. Apparently, when they built I-69, it caused flooding issues in that area. So we're aware that that's something that we need to make sure we take into account as we do our design. We've reached out to the state about can we utilize some of their right-of-way and some of their drainage along the interstate. They said yes with some, requirements, of course, but we're aware that the drainage on this site's important, and making sure that we don't affect the neighboring property owners is very important.
Yeah, I guess I realize that we're not deciding on this tonight, so I'm going to try and pose my questions as raising issues that I think ought to be addressed in further discussion. So I think the question of drainage mitigation is an important one to address, given both the concerns expressed by residents and, as indicated, well, certainly for any facility, we don't want flooding to be not thought about at the early stages. So the other question I have is a little bit more about the designation of this as institutional civic. And one of the things that, as I read the comprehensive plan, one of the other elements here is that for an institutional civic, the MI is critical that the civic and institutional uses that directly provide on-site community services are easily accessible via all modes of transportation. And I just want to point out that even, this is a concern that staff raised about transportation. It's huge for the MI category. And I want to make sure that both the petitioner and the staff also address how the goals of MI will be addressed. If that's the requested amended version, we need to make sure that that's really clear, because sites and buildings must meet the standards of ADA, blah, blah, blah. So I think there are all sorts of concerns here that are really relevant around the transportation issue. So for me, it's not just an interest, it's specific to the institutional designation. And then the other one that I noticed in that same area is uses in this category should provide measures to mitigate undesirable operational impacts such as light and noise pollution, traffic congestions, and spillover parking. While that's probably true for lots of areas, I think, if we're building, if this is a public institutional, this is a public civic designation, we need to really make sure we've addressed those issues. So I guess if there's any comment about either of those two areas now, you know, I'm willing to hear them, but I guess I want to raise them as issues for both staff and the petitioner going forward.
I want to go ahead and say, just to clarify, institutional slash civic is a designation for particular areas of the city in the comprehensive plan. And this area isn't one of those. So I don't know if you might understand that, Jillian, but just for anyone else who's watching. The institutional civic land designation in the comprehensive plan does have important comments and details about institutional civic uses, so I do think it's probably useful to discuss those things, but it's an actual mapped in the land use area, the future land use map area, and that's where the petition site is. It's mapped as employment center. So that's part of what we're saying, is that to rezone to mixed use institutional, are we actually moving a little bit away from the comprehensive plan designation of employment center? Because what it's zoned now is mixed use employment, and those things align. So just to clarify that point, because I know that sometimes that's a little confusing.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, for clarifying that. I think that my comments are designed to help us think about the goals and where I think there's some overlap and strengthening that might need to be made around this. So I'm just trying to strengthen some of the information that's provided. So I get what you're saying. Thank you for that clarification.
And I will say there may be a member of the public present. We did hear, related to your drainage question, we heard from a member of the public who had, I believe, been contacted by one of the contractors for the county, but then wasn't able to get a hold of them. So I actually emailed that member of the public and Mr. Cockrell about a month ago, and I don't know if that was missed or something, but they own the property directly to the northeast, and having lived there for a long time, understand that this property drains into their property. So wanting to get some details about plans for the future and mitigation and those types of things, I think is what they're interested in. I'm not sure if they're there tonight, but that's what we've received thus far from the public. Just questions, again, which might not be specifically pertinent to the rezone, but to the further development proposal in the future, but something to address now if it is a substantial impact on the neighbors, then that is antithetical to the findings that we're supposed to find, which is minimizing, trying to figure out how to minimize those impacts.
Hi, Julie Thomas, I'm president of the Board of Commissioners. I just also wanted to address this as well, very briefly, regarding stormwater. Being a member of the county's planning commission since 2009, I do get it. It is very important. One of the things that happens is sometimes land is best left fallow and untouched, and that helps with drainage. Clearly, that's not what's happening now. So I think getting this property developed with an appropriate drainage, with retention basins, will actually make things better for those surrounding the area, and will fix the issues that have been left behind with the construction of I-69. They tend to put a lot of fill dirt around the edges of the highway, and that's not always great for drainage. The issue of transportation is vital to us. We are part of the Community Justice Committee, just left that meeting, and we are not going to do something without transportation. We have to have it. And as Mr. Cockrell pointed out, we have had a really productive and a really informative initial meeting with Bloomington Transit. They're not in a position to say, oh yes, we'll do X, Y, and Z, because we're very early in the process and they can't make that commitment. But we did talk to Mr. Connell and a few members of the board at a meeting. But it was a very hopeful meeting, and they were grateful that we came and talked to them about some things that could benefit both the county and the city, honestly. Because once Fullerton Pike opens, now you've got another library. You have some other things that you may want to connect with. But if we're in a position where we get a rezone, and there's a lot of ifs in this sentence. If we get a rezone, if Bloomington Transit's unable to service the area, we, as the Board of Commissioners, will have to figure out the transportation issue, and we understand that. We're certainly never going to be putting this forward and moving forward and building a single thing until we know we have adequate, more than adequate transportation lined up and arranged, even if it's something where we have to initiate a program of our own.
Thank you. Thanks.
Commissioner Enright Randolph, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just jotting a few things down during the presentation from Jackie. Great presentation. I just wanted to make a note that Bloomington Transit doesn't have plans to go a lot of places until we bring those up or we see the growth and they start having demands to get out there. So I agree that, that's significant and called out in the comprehensive plan, but again, we've seen many petitions not have transportation to and from BT until we bring it up, and guess what? They've addressed our needs. It's pretty cool. I'm really curious about the road improvement project. Now, I'm not gonna say we need or don't need it, but I'm pretty sure that that connectivity was planned prior to I-69. So I'm curious if that connectivity still yields a significant benefit, to put a road through there. And correct me if I'm wrong, we saw this a lot before, and the petitioner pulled their petition because of the cost of the capital improvement project of building that road. So I find it somewhat of a hindrance of getting something on this lot currently, just from what I've observed sitting here for almost 6 years now with a lot of my colleagues on the City Plan Commission. I actually sit on the county's stormwater management board, and I think we do a very good job of looking at potential stormwater and drainage needs. This is also in one of our critical drainage ways. So, again, a lot of those things are addressed more at the site plan. I know this is a tougher one because we kind of want to see what's going to happen on this site, but right now that's a lot of work for just getting our favor. Obviously, this does move to the Common Council, and they are going to make the final action. The comp plan, that was referred a couple of times, but comp plans are fluent. They get updated based on county needs. This is something that the county has found themselves in a position to address. So a lot of it is being, presented today as what they have found and identified as the best solution. But I'll just read one powerful comment from a presentation I saw from Bliss McKnight, Mr. McKnight, at the recent Indiana Association of Counties. And let me get to page 3. I'm not going to bore everyone. Counties are a main portal to the criminal justice system. Mental health and addiction issues are a common characteristic of people caught up in the criminal justice system. By some estimates, as many as 80% of inmates in Indiana jails have drug or mental health issues. We need to figure out a path forward. We need to be proactive in this and create enough flexibility so we can have other services provided. Now, I guess we're here to see, does this fit with the comprehensive plan, and do we feel like we can support a map amendment? Now, I'll leave that with my colleagues, but this is something that really needs to be considered, and I think us being proactive gives us more possible solutions in the future if the justice system takes action of addressing some of what we're dealing with differently.
Was there anything in there that you wanted to address? Was you looking for a response from staff or the petitioner on that? Or?
No, I just wanted to leave everyone with some
all right.
thought.
Great. All right. Commissioner Cochran.
So looking at the parcels, the county controls the parcels to the south and to the east are under the county planning jurisdiction. There's 5 different zoning classes there at that intersection there. So knowing that, making the change from ME to the MI, and per the comprehensive plan, we're going to be potentially losing some of the wishes that were in the comprehensive plan. Has the county thought about any of the zoning around that county on those areas that might help complement that? The other thing I'll just mention is I-69, as it's getting more traffic, we may not see a lot of demand today, but obviously that's coming to this intersection eventually.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, a really thoughtful question, because we are in the midst, in the county, of completing our CDO, our County Development Ordinance, right now. So clearly, we would be responding to whatever gets onto that property with an appropriate zone surrounding that property. So yeah, that's a really good question.
Commissioner Burrell.
My question, and maybe, I don't know who presented this, if it was Jackie. No, I think it was you. So just to clarify, so does the Monroe County Jail has to be within city limits, corporations, or can it be on Monroe County?
Anywhere in
Outside?
Monroe County.
Anywhere in Monroe County.
I would say that I would preface that with the majority of the people who are brought to the jail are brought from within the city limits. So moving it further, far out of the city boundary doesn't make a lot of operational sense for the combined public safety network we have.
So is it a problem of utilities? Meaning, if the jail goes out of the city limits, and then you are out there and you're not close to water or sewer, is that problematic?
I don't think that's problematic. I think one of the bigger issues is that we wanted to have the opportunity to work with Bloomington Transit to provide transportation to and from this facility. And my understanding is that as of right now, if we're outside the corporate limits, unless we're in a specific area which is already developed, that's not an opportunity that we could have.
Yeah, and I will just add that one of the reasons this was chosen as our first site of interrogation is because, pardon the pun, is because we heard from the city administration the desire to keep this facility inside the city limits. This is the only lot of its size that we could find in the city limits. We have options outside in the county. We can use package sewer treatment plants. We have other options, but we're trying this first based on requests from the administration.
And then I have a question for Jackie. So where are the MIs within the city limit that would fit this institution, I guess, but it will have to be big enough?
Right, so I'm sorry, so you're saying where are there other MI zoned districts?
Yes, that would fit this project within the city.
Sure, so, yeah, most of the existing MI mixed-use institutional is land that's already being used as institutional use.
Okay.
Right, so like campus areas, I can get you a map of those areas that's more detailed for next month. There is some MI on the north side of town, but they may not be areas that are big enough.
Yeah, I'm just wanted to know if there were other areas
Yeah.
that were big enough, but it sounds like they are already in use, correct?
Right, so it sounds, I think if they're going to need a facility that's 25 to 30 plus acres, that they will have to do a rezone somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Commissioner St. John.
Yeah, thank you. Just one, well, I have a couple questions. One is very particular. I just didn't understand, this is for staff, on page 82, the site was also used as an I-69 soil borrow site, and may in the future, topsoil may need to be replaced on the site. What does that mean?
When we did the Transitional site off 17th, when we first started talking to them about that plan unit development, one of the things that they said, I believe we said it in meetings, but also especially to staff, was that they weren't going to be able to meet landscaping requirements because they didn't have enough topsoil on site. But they didn't have enough topsoil because a previous owner had sold it. So for us, that's kind of a self-created problem. You still have to meet UDO requirements even if you have handicapped your site in some way. So here at this site, we just want to make it clear that if that same issue, once they do their environmental reviews, is created or is present at this site, then that's something they'll have to consider in their redevelopment costs. That all of the regular landscaping requirements also have to be met, even though the site was stripped.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question. I think this is for Mr. Cockrell. You mentioned that you need 25 acres, is that right? But developable is another 12 or something?
No, I think, and I think it should be in our packet. We reached out to our site assessors and asked them, who have designed many jails, what is the minimum lot size that we need in order to make sure we can build a jail? And their response was, and it's in the packet, basically 25 acres. Now, what I'm saying is that doesn't all have to be buildable acres, because what's included in what they need is to make sure they have adequate drainage and things like that, which you don't have to be able to build on.
Okay, and so when you talk about these supportive services, wraparound services, all the things that most people now acknowledge we need, is there then space to do that adequately? And not to say you're window dressing, but is there space to do that so it will actually be effective?
And I'm going to answer it in a way that may seem a little unusual in that I don't know, because we're going through a process to determine what all the things we need. There is room for some additional space, and quite a bit actually of additional buildable space. And I don't know if your staff can correct me if I'm wrong. We're in the process of trying to organize county officials to go out and be able to see the site. We haven't been able to do that because of environmental conditions, like it's been too wet and there's been some bugs and things like that. But we're thinking about doing that, not this week, but next week. If allowed, more than happy to let you guys know when that is, and if you want to come, you can. If you can't, that's fine as well. So you can kind of look at the site and get a feel for it as well. I would say, because we don't know everything we'd want to put out there, I can't say it's adequate for everything, but it certainly is adequate for additional space and quite a bit of it.
And so do you envision, and you said this, I think, that the jail would be how much bigger than the current jail?
Well, I actually think from a square footage of the floor, it'll be about the same. The problem is our jail is essentially 3 floors of our 1-acre justice building, and so we are constrained because of the ability to have to go up and down and utilize that. I think when we looked at Hamilton County's expansion, their facility total holds, I think they have 500 now, and it's about a 2.5 to 3 acre site. I don't think initially we're contemplating having that many beds in our facility. I think that's more than we need. But if you think about that being, comparable, even in that size, it's about 3 acres of space, which is essentially what we have in our justice building. It's just ours is stacked on top of each other, which has its own constraints in terms of how you can design and shape it.
Okay. And then just to confirm, Jackie, you said that no matter, so the city wants it to be built within the city limits, and by definition, something is going to have to be rezoned if that is to be agreed upon, right?
So, yes, Ms. Thomas has said that she has had discussions with the administration, or someone has, and that that the administration wants to be in the city limits. I don't think that's something staff has confirmed, so we, not to say that it's true, but that's not something we put out there. So that's something we can work on for next month. Yes, I will do a deeper dive on the map before next month, but just doing a small review and knowing how we place those MI districts, they were mostly based on existing uses. So there wouldn't be, large MI areas available at this time.
Okay, thank
So
you.
rezoning would be required.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Seaboard.
Thanks. A question, maybe part of it is a story. So just what we have or what I have in the packet is this specific location. So my questions are maybe a little the background about how we got to this place. You mentioned in the presentation about I think the Thompson PUD is an example that was at one time planned for a facility like this and potentially is even zoned to allow this use as it currently is zoned. And so I'm just curious, it sounds like an assessment of multiple sites was completed. All that we know is that this is a location or the top location, but can you provide any insight on how this site was selected as the top candidate and maybe why something that previously wasn't? Just a little more on why.
Well, I think I'll try. How about that? Because, when this happened, we being me and two other staff for the county were designed, hey, go forth and look for areas. And then I think I went through kind of the criteria we were looking at when we were going through that. And then speaking with some of our elected officials, I know the sheriff, for instance, had a preference to be closer to the interstate than maybe on the east side of Bloomington, and the east side of Bloomington has a lot of transportation issues for say, Ellettsville and things like that. So we were looking at sites of fairly large sites, and I don't recall any necessarily on the east side of Bloomington anyway, for what we were doing. And then when we got that, then we started looking at things like, does it have utilities? What would it cost to get utilities? And then is it in city limits? Those kind of things. I think we actually looked at quite a few sites between Bloomington and Ellettsville, off Vernal and things like that. And for one reason or another, they just didn't check all the boxes. This site was particularly drawing to us for a variety of reasons. One, it had really excellent access to the interstate. Two, we know Fullerton Pike is going to provide really good access to the city itself, because right now it's kind of a peninsula, right? If we didn't know that Fullerton Pike was going in, we'd have a lot more heartburn with this site. Three, if you look at the county staffing of people who are currently in the Justice Building, and I don't know if I did this specifically for jail and sheriff, but certainly those within the Justice Building, I would say, I think this is right, and if I'm wrong, I'll confirm it, is like about half or over half of those either live within that area code that is southwest side of the county or out of the county. So those downtown commutes, this would be much easier for a lot of our staffing as well. So we looked at a lot of different things, and I think we got to this site primarily because of the buffer. The tree buffer, we think that is excellent, because honestly, if people don't want to live by a jail, and I can't blame them, right? I mean, it's just one of those uses that, while, in my mind, and I know the people who work there, and I've seen what happens around our current jail, is a lot of those issues aren't related to where the jail is, but there is something there that keeps people from not wanting it near their home. So I understand that, and I don't think that's a hard argument that would be a hard argument for anybody to say is unreasonable. This being buffered by those trees, particularly the trees, because I also think when we do our design, and this is me talking because I don't have any say in the final design, I'd really love to get an opportunity where we could utilize that nature view for the people who are actually in the facility, because I think that would help them with their process of rehabilitation and reduce recidivism. I think just that landscape is comforting.
I think just knowing this is a first hearing among others, I may have other questions I'll pose, and maybe just as I'm talking right now, another one sort of on the topic of details. I know I saw the memo. It was like a one bullet thing that said 25 acres. Like I'm more, like I guess this is the engineer in me, and like why 25 acres? What leads to that? I know we've talked about some of it, but knowing the existing facility is roughly an acre, so context matters a lot.
Yeah.
And so just as much detail as can be provided, I think would be useful information to me, and I imagine others.
Would that be more helpful? Again, I'll defer to, if I could get that in writing from our site assessors as to why, more details, would that be more helpful to get it in writing prior to the meeting, or?
Yeah, certainly, if that's something that petitioners wanted to put together and get to us, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so we'll try to get, I mean, that is, in my mind, a great question, but it would be a really hard one to sit here at a podium and explain. And I think getting that as a written document may be much more helpful.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I probably have, so I'm just here, and I know the petition is for the rezone. And I guess just a question, just knowing the rezone still would be a conditional use. So there's still the next step if this rezone even goes forward.
Absolutely.
And so more just taking a step back on if, and I'm not somebody that's ever, I guess, would something like a what were other options considered, like a PUD, where it wouldn't be a conditional use? And I don't know all the details of why one or the other, but like just when I saw that the still would then be conditional, it caught my attention.
Well, and I think that may be better for your, we did talk about that, and the PUD, if you look at the UDO, the PUD has some really set, rigid requirements that just simply didn't work for this. You know, my personal opinion is I wish that conditional use for this, for a jail would have been in anywhere where government services buildings are allowed. To me, this is the epitome of a government service building. And then you use it as a conditional use to make it, so that we can have the conversation, well, yeah, it's a conditional use, but does it make sense for this property? But that's not what we're working with, so we're not working with it.
Okay. Maybe the last one, and then I'll be done for now, is we've talked about transportation, understanding I-69, the Fullerton Pike project, Bloomington Transit, appreciate the conversations that are happening. A little bit more about the new proposed facility that's in the city's transportation plan. And I don't know if some of this is more for staff or for the petitioner, but just, you know, there's the potential that the project could move forward without a subdivision, which is our typical process to dedicating right-of-way. And I'm just, I think one of the criteria is adequacy of road systems. And I think if we lose that potential opportunity to capture what is in the transportation plan, that concerns me in my role. And so just curious if that would be some type of commitment could be considered, and this is our first hearing, but just keeping that in mind, I guess that's certainly a point of interest for me.
And I guess, one, that's a difficult question to answer today, because if you saw kind of the initial map with the Karst Conservancy easements, and then you saw that transportation right after it, there's a conflict there, right? You know, I could, namely the road would go right through one of the you know, the sensitive areas. I guess my feeling is that as far as the roadway we're thinking of, at minimum, I mean, we're going to expect police vehicles and first responders to drive on it. So I think we're going to have a pretty healthy, you know, access to wherever the facility will be. My guess is it would be somewhere in the back, closer to the tree area. So, you know, and then to get from there to the end of the property, you know, that's something we'd have to talk about internally. I guess, to me, when I first looked at that roadway, and I kind of know a little bit about that area, is, if we build it there, is that other half reasonable, right? I mean, that's kind of the other conversation we should have, because our side of that road probably is much more cost-effective to build than the other side. And I just I don't want to say, oh, we don't want to build. I mean, we don't really have an objection. I've always thought it would be in, I think, both the city and the county's best interest that if that road doesn't connect and the county's responsible for the maintenance of that roadway, where if it's a dedicated right-of-way to the city, then the city would technically be required to maintain it. Though, I mean, that's just kind of my feeling. It's our building. If the road's only going to serve our building, we should maintain it. And that kind of an idea. That's my only real hesitation to any of that.
Okay. And I may have lied. I might have one last question. I'm so
Go
sorry.
ahead.
This really will be. Getting back to the comprehensive plan and the land use for this area being employment, and maybe this is something to be thinking about for the next, but just curious if there's a sense for employment, so employees, like how, I don't know what the staffing of a facility like this would be, or things like that. That would be useful information, I think, for our consideration.
And it would be really useful, but I will tell you it's also going to be really difficult to understand. I can tell you right now we currently have about 70 jail staff, and that does not include our advanced correctional health, which is our nurses, our psychiatrists. So you're talking probably another 10. We would probably move the sheriff's department with the jail, as well as probably some kind of court services, so we don't have to transport to the courts downtown and back for those criminal cases when they do the initials, hearings and things like that. Our new facility shouldn't have as much of a need for that many jailers, but I think if we look at our vision and what we want, we'll probably have a stronger need and probably want to utilize a lot more mental health professionals. And then I think any additional facility we have would be much more aligned with that kind of mental health, substance use disorder, those kind of philosophies. So it's really hard to juggle that. I can tell you what we have now. I can tell you at the end of the day, once this is all redesigned, we'll probably want more of the mental health side support staff and things like that. But I couldn't ever even guess at a real number for the jail itself, let alone for these other things that we aren't really sure what they're going to be yet. So, I mean, my guess is as an employment zone, we are going to bring in employees there that would probably match a lot of the other uses, unless it's going to be some kind of manufacturing or something like that. I mean, I don't think we'd hit that level. I think if we were talking, I think somebody mentioned retail earlier, I think our jobs would probably be equal in number, maybe a little bit more, probably definitely have better benefits, wages. As a county employee, I can't say that the people like the county council have paid us fairly right before budgets are approved. That's just not allowed.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out, there have been a couple of questions from commissioners on MI zoning, and we do have a map pulled up. If it would be helpful, we can just kind of step through that. It'll only take about 30 seconds, just to kind of highlight where the MI zoning is within the community. And as Mrs. Scanlon pointed out, most of those uses, most of the land that is zoned for MI is currently occupied by facilities. I would say 90% of those are occupied by either Indiana University buildings, churches, schools, parks, playgrounds, things like that are owned by the Parks Department. So most of those are already occupied by uses. The only use or the only property I would say that is currently zoned MI that is anywhere close in scale to this would be the Winston Thompson facility on South Walnut Street that CBU owns. But otherwise, all the facilities that you see around town that are zoned MI currently have buildings and facilities already on them.
Thank you. Any other questions
I'd just like to make a
Commissioners?
clarifying statement. They were talking about elected officials and people being involved in the selection process and me being the elected county surveyor. I was not involved in the selection process at all, so I just wanted to make that statement.
Thanks. Any other questions? I've got a question. We've asked a lot of questions about MI zone, and I'm curious just to understand what other properties we might have that would be remaining in ME zone if this one were to be rezoned. It seems that, you know, a large chunk of our employment in Bloomington comes from those uses that the ME zone is designed for. If you look at things like Cook, Catalent, et cetera, if we ever want to attract another one of those types of employers, this seems like a prime spot for it. If this were to be rezoned to MI, what are the other potential areas we would have for that type of, you know, larger scale employment?
Yeah, so I can.
You go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so yes, certainly the Plan Commission as well from the Bill Brown petition that was heard for this exact same property where we had these same discussions. You know, we talked about land that was zoned ME that is in the city that could be used for employment. So this is one of those areas. The other large section of area that's zoned ME is over off of Fountain Drive. So that's in the former area that was Vernal Pike. It's just off of I-69 as well, although certainly as you're aware, the access to I-69 was kind of segmented when it went through that area off of Fountain Drive. So those are the only two main, really large sections of ME zone land that are currently, what I would say, halfway undeveloped.
Is that the pink color on the map we're seeing right now? Is that? Yeah.
Sorry, yes. This color here, so this is the petition site here, so then some ME to the north, and then the area Eric was describing further north near Old Vernal, which no longer directly connects, here on the northwest side of town. And then there's a small bit of ME over here off of, in this area off of Rogers.
Thanks. Okay, any other questions from commissioners? Okay, then it is time for public comment. If you are in the chambers, just make your way up to the podium, state your name for the record, and you will have up to 5 minutes to make comment. If you're online, joining us via Zoom, just click on that reactions button at the bottom of the screen and click on the raise hand button, and we will recognize you when it is your turn to make comment. I'm going to ask before we start, I know this is one of the first public hearings we have on a very big and important issue, and it'll be tempting to use this as a forum for all types of questions and comments about this project, but just as a reminder, this body only has the purview of deciding whether or not this particular piece of land is suitable for this use. So there will be plenty of other forums to make comments about whether we need a new jail or whether we need to move county offices. That's not really the question at hand tonight. It's really just, if we do, if that were to happen, is this an appropriate piece of land for that use? So I'm going to just ask that you try to keep your comments as concise as possible to that question at hand. But with that, please state your name and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I've lived in Bloomington my whole life, and to your comment that you just made, which I will respect, I do think I don't understand why we're building a new jail, why that's even in the cards. You just mentioned it was supposed to be the same size as the current one. There's been no budget done on the repairs for the current jail to be made, and I'd be interested to see what that budget would look like, I'm sure it would be under $70 million. The current jail was actually built in 1984, so it's actually really new and went under remodel in 2017. So I don't understand why we need to build a bigger jail, not to mention that the property is out of town, out of sight, out of mind, clearly just a slap in the face to people who struggle with addiction and mental health, as the comment that you made, which I thought was really great, of that being such a significant population in the jail. Jail is traumatizing, it's isolating, you're isolated from your friends and family. It's not a place, no matter how many program rooms or trees you plant or trees that you keep there, it's not a place where people will heal. Talk to anyone who's been in jail, they didn't get better. Like, that's not how it happens. So I'd be interested to see, like, this amount of money that's being proposed, even just to buy this property, of like how that could change mental health services and addiction treatment in this town, and funneling resources that way instead. It's also on a wetland, seems really stupid. I don't know. That's it.
Thank you.
Sorry, could you please state your last name for the record as well?
Do I have to?
I don't know that you have to. We just normally ask that you do, that's all.
I would not like to, thank you.
Thank you. Are there others who'd like to make public comment?
My name's Duncan Campbell, and I'm the neighbor to the northeast of this site. And I talked to Jackie about some drainage issues that I have, but I guess I want to say I really don't have any objection to there being a jail on this site. I understand the reasons for expanding or moving the jail, and I pretty much agree with what the county is doing. I've been on the Preservation Commission at the county and the city for seems like all my life, and I feel like that some of the decisions that have been discussed tonight are I'm pretty much in agreement with. At the same time, I've lived at this site for 36 years, and I've watched several petitions come through. A golf course, I don't know, I'm sure some of you remember, there's so many I don't even remember. The infamous Dr. Tawari at one time wanted to put a highway through there and build a significant medical facility, which also didn't happen. But a lot of the reasons that those things didn't happen were because of environmental impact on a sensitive place. And so all the discussions of the roadway to the north that goes out to Tap Road, the Environmental Commission came in, did extensive work, wetlands were discovered, there's floodplain, there's delicate plant life, there are just a lot of things, if you go back and look at those reports, that would tell you not to put a road through there. My most personal concern is with the water drainage, because we own 32 acres of what are considered abandoned quarries next to active quarry sites. The water table on my ground, which is all karst, and most of the site that we're talking about is karst. And when we get the geology report, I think it'll bear that out. The Limestone Institute knows it. The limestone miners to the east know it. The deleterious fact about karst is that water moves through it willy-nilly, and it's very hard to plan and scout where that water goes. Our well is in that water table, and so we've seen well contamination from disruption, other disruption, and it's concerning to me that adequate protections can happen in a terrain that is almost unmappable. So all good intentions aside, and I'm sure they're there, I'm not completely convinced that it's possible to protect that environment from water running off a parking lot or the roof of a building. I'm just not sure that it is. That said, I'm pretty much sympathetic with the issue that has been discussed. But over the years, as I've seen all the different studies and all the different plans come through for the use of that site, and I welcome a good use on that site, but ones that have serious environmental impact frighten me. And we are at the bottom of that drainage pond, so all the drainage on the east side of this site goes downhill into a series of sinkholes and then drains right into a waterfall that comes into one of my quarries. So retention, I'm not even sure detention or retention is the right word to use when you're working in karst. I mean, we've seen parking lots collapse that were protected. So that's my major concern. And the environmental impacts to the north, I think we need to be very careful when we think about putting major transportation artery through there. Cost aside, and of course someone else owns that land, so I'm not sure how that works. But those are our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on ZO40-22? Do we have any online commenters?
Yeah.
Yes. May I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead. Please state your name and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Sam Holman. Turn on my video, but it doesn't, not letting me. I had a few concerns with this this site. I think one of the biggest ones being transportation. I know that there have been sort of initial and preliminary meetings with Bloomington Transit, but we haven't really gotten very much information on what the plan would actually look like. And I think access to, especially if the courts are going to be moved out to this location as well, or if we're talking about various mental health resources being located on this site, then it's a huge accessibility issue that there be good transportation there. And I think with it being just further out of town, that's going to be an issue even if there is a bus line there. And I don't know, I guess first I would just like to see a lot more details of that plan, because I think that's huge. You don't want people missing court appointments because there wasn't transportation. Like, that just creates a lot of recidivism, and I don't know, that seems like a major logistical issue with this particular site. Also environmentally, I think, the wetlands and the karst are something that were not really mentioned in the presentation by the petitioner. And I feel like there needs to be a lot more research and just general information about that so that we can make a more informed decision about this site. To me, it sounds concerning that there are like multiple wetlands on this site, and how are we going to handle that? I think we need more info on. And then lastly, I guess I just had a question, which is, I'm not sure if we could get a little more information on what the problem is exactly with having the multiple floors in the current facility, because that was mentioned as the reason you need this larger site so that it can be a single floor. And so I guess I just kind of wonder why it needs to be that way. And then I guess that's about it. I am a little skeptical of this site and of the need to expand the jail. I also don't think, I know that people have very good intentions with regards to developing mental health programming and treatment and stuff like that, but at least to my mind, those really need to be separated from incarceration, because we know that incarceration is traumatic and therefore antithetical to any kind of treatment for mental health. So I guess I see both sort of big picture problems, but also more specific problems with this site with regards to transportation and environment especially.
Thank you. Do we have any other online commenters?
Oh, ma'am, we can barely hear you. I don't know if Eric, you can turn that up in there. I can't hear it here.
Yeah, we can't hear it here either.
Just barely.
I thought the sound was how we can go. How about now? Is that better?
Yeah, I think it's turn up as loud as it can be in chambers. Can you all hear, commissioners?
Yeah, it's very, very muffled.
So I'm not sure why, but it's silly at all. I really feel as a homeowner, I think that it is really good that we tonight about the impact of people that live in that area. I noticed that the aerial photo of this site shows a 160 wide vacant area, and it didn't look like there was anything around that area. However, the rest of the street is a residential area. My home is one. I've been already impacted by I-69 and had a portion of my property taken to it. Also through veterans who had to use pipelines for my home to I-69, which is another portion of my property. I currently have a large street light on I-69 that shines directly into my bedroom. I cannot imagine having a jail direct to parts of my home with all the activities, and I heard tonight stated by the people that who would want a jail near their property, in their home? I mean, they actually said, well, I know, and my neighbors not I, and we're concerned about safety, about crime, about all the activities, all the transportation, all the issues that would cause us to be fearful and cause us to have our home disrupted. So I just want to say that I'm strongly opposed to having this property used for today. I can literally go out my back door onto my deck and hear on that property while persons on that property. I just think that this is not the best place to be. So hopefully you will really look into this a lot. It sounds like the property itself would not utilize this scale in very good ways and with the current topography. And so I hope that you will consider this one.
All right, thank
So
you.
The caller was able to send us a message in the chat, so we have a good gist of what she was trying to relay in her comments. So we will make sure to pass that along to the Plan Commission members as soon as we can.
Great, thank you so much.
I do want to acknowledge, though, that I couldn't hear any of that, and I think it's important for whoever that was, that at least I'm seeing other fellow commissioners shake their head in agreement that if you do want us to hear more fully what you have to say, I encourage you to come to the next hearing, because we unfortunately couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah, also, if you'd like to submit a more thorough comment via email, I'm sure the staff can distribute that to us as well. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to comment?
No other hands currently raised on Zoom. You can raise your hand or send a message to either myself or Ms. Pasos if you'd like to make a comment.
Anyone else here in the chamber who would like to make comment? Yeah, I think we'll wrap up public comments since there doesn't seem to be anyone else, and if you'd like to wrap up.
I think the only thing I'd like to say is we had two people who asked questions about the reasons why and the cost. You know, in your packet and in this packet, there's a link to a Monroe County website that has our criminal justice reports. I think most of the answers are found in those documents. One was the cost of repairing or redoing our current facility. There is an estimate of that cost. That cost would not include such things as housing people while you are doing a big construction project in it, and it doesn't involve some of those kind of things. And then the second question by Mr. Holden talked about, you know, why that style of building's not appropriate. I don't know if it gets into that. I don't recall, but I bet it would touch upon it. But I would encourage anybody who's listening to read those reports, even if you're all in support of what we're doing, and definitely if you're not in support, because I think it provides good information that everybody in the community should know.
Thank you. All right, we are now back to the commission for any additional questions or final comments. Commissioner Herrera.
Yeah, so we have heard from commissioners and also from the public about and also from the department, the thing related with the transportation. It seems that Bloomington Transit doesn't have any future plans by that place, and I just wondering if there is not a plan for transportation from Bloomington Transit. What would be the plan B for people who don't have access to the facility? Is there any conversation regarding an extension of a route? Is there any proposal for creating a new route from Bloomington Transit? And if this is maybe not a project they have, what would be the possibilities for the community?
And I guess I'd answer that in probably a couple different ways. One is we've reached out to Bloomington Transit, and they are interested in working with this if the rezoning goes through. I would also note that, you know, by the time this would actually be operational, we're a few years away from where we're at today, so there's a lot of time to work out a lot of the details. Clearly, this current site is only accessible right now by going to the interstate. That's going to change in the next few years. Clearly, this is kind of an undeveloped peninsula in the city with which there's really no reason for them to currently do that. I guess if that were to fall through, I think we would try to work with our partners at Rural Transit to see if they had anything available, and try to work through that mechanism. We have a pretty good relationship with them. I think what Commissioner Thomas had said earlier is that we're committed to making that happen even if we don't have the Bloomington Transit route. We would make certain that we had some public transportation that would get people to that site from other places within the city, and probably, if that were to go on, some other places in the county as well.
Just one quick question regarding the material, and maybe we have it somewhere, but the presentation that you gave is in our package, the PowerPoint that you presented.
I don't believe it was in our packet, but if you could, does staff have a copy of that?
Yes, we do, and we can certainly pass that along.
Great, thank you.
We'll make sure that all the Planning Commission members get that.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments or motions? Commissioner Enran Randolph.
So yes, if you go to the Monroe County website, under several different ways you can navigate there, but under the Commissioner's office, there is the Criminal Justice Assessment Report, and I'm just stating that for the public, and I think it would be great to circulate with us as well.
Thank you.
There you go.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cochran.
Did someone else?
I couldn't tell if you were ready to come.
Okay.
Go ahead.
if you've ever toured the jail, I mean, unfortunately I have, it's obviously there's need for upgrade. So I commend you guys looking for opportunities, and and I do like this site because of the buffers that Mr. Cockrell talked about. I mean, we've got quarry on one side, and we've got kind of ravines on the upper side, and then you're surrounded with the highway there. So I think there's I do like this site. The challenges that I have, like I mentioned earlier, was losing the potential ME uses that we currently have right now. So as you guys think through your CDO, if this goes through, obviously I'd love to challenge you to look for opportunities, because we need employment sites in our county and around our city. So I think you've got a great opportunity to, here's a great site that we'd be giving up for that opportunity, even though it's been available for a long time. And Mr. Brown's waited a long time to do something with this. But as I see I-69 starting to pick up traffic, we're just seeing the beginnings of some demand. So, but we'll see where it goes, and maybe you guys will have some comments next time we come around. So, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, I was kind of going in the same direction. I think there's a lot more that we need to understand about what we're giving up for the employment center, and this whole idea of part of the I-69 and an interchange focus area. I think we need to know a little bit more about what we are forsaking in this, particularly around that I-69 and interchange focus area. So I hope to hear more about that.
Commissioner St. John?
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be important to know what we would be giving up, and also the other side of the coin, which is we apparently have a jail that many people agree, not everyone agrees, but needs to be replaced. And those seem to be coming together here in ways that are difficult to understand. I think, boy, I sure would like to know this statement around the mayor and administration suggesting that it needs to stay within the city limits. And then looking at the map, I think Commissioner Burrell asked the really great question, is like, where else is it going to be? And so the public good need versus the other public good need of the employment center seem to really be butting up against each other here. And so that's a pretty difficult thing to address. Certainly, we're asked to address the UDO and the comprehensive plan, but there's also this big community need that has presented itself as well. So it's certainly more information would be helpful, specifically around the map. Thank you.
Yeah, well, one quick question. This is regarding the process, so we will have in 2 hearings.
Well, it depends a
Plan
little bit
commission or
on
this-
what happens. The staff recommendation is that we continue this to a second hearing tonight. And-
Right, and then after that, if it passes, we'll go to the council.
Correct, yes. So I think, and legal counsel can confirm if I'm correct, or correct me if I'm out of line, but our final action would be to make a recommendation to the city council on whether or not the rezone should be affected.
Yeah, that's correct. Under state law, this body's role in a rezone request is to make a recommendation that the rezone go forward or that it be denied. Alternatively, there is a way that this body, if you can't come to a decision, can just send forward the rezone request with no recommendation at all.
All right, any other comments or, Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say that it really appears that the recommendation for a second hearing is called for by all of our comments, that we're kind of all thinking through this and wondering about more information. So I would just like to put a motion forward to recommend it to, let it go to the second hearing for the November meeting. Thank you.
All right, so the motion is to continue ZO 40-22 to the required second hearing in November. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any final comment before we call the roll on that motion? Last call. All right, let's call the roll.
Seaboard.
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Wessler,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
and St. John.
Yes.
All right, that motion is approved, and that petition is continued to our November meeting. That is our final petition on the agenda this evening. So unless there are other announcements or motions or questions, I think we will. All right, we are adjourned. We'll see you in November. Thank you.